Okay, I hope everyone can hear me. Hello and welcome to WoodWing's webinar, and thank you for dialing in. Today I'm very happy that we have our friends from Kapero helping us or discussing with us the topic from publisher to efficient media house. My name is Philip Hendricks. I'm the product marketing manager here at WoodWing. And in this session, my task is to be the host and more the technical guy in the background. While we're still waiting for some people to dial in or giving you the opportunity to grab a cup of coffee, I would like to make you aware of some housekeeping rules where you should actually be familiar with. So all participants besides today's speakers are muted. If you have any questions during the webinar, you can post them in the GoToWebinar panel that should be displayed per default on the right-hand side of your screen. This also gives you the opportunity to interact with us at any time. So for instance, if you don't hear us the right way, it would be nice if you can give us some feedback via this channel. If you have any questions, again, you can do this. You can ask the questions at any time and we will answer the question at the end of the session. Furthermore, the webinar will be recorded and we will share the webinar with you guys within the next 24 hours. So the speakers for today's webinar are Maarten Reinders. He's the CCO of WoodWing. And he will be joined by Johansson and by Peter Lüdberg, both co-founders and managing partners at Kapero. That's everything from my side. So without further ado, I would like to hand over to Maarten Reinders. Maarten, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Philip, and good morning, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. I'm very excited about this webinar because I think what we will talk about today is for a change not about software or tools, but we will talk about people. Because whilst we at WoodWing provide tools that can help realize more efficiency for publishers such as yourselves, actually we are also very much aware that efficiency also has a lot to do with people and processes, as you can see on this slide here. And efficiency has been a theme for a long time, and probably in the current day more relevant than ever, I would say. And at the same time, to achieve true efficiency, you need to have people working together, and you need to also have the buy-in. So what the buy-in actually is something that starts from the top with the senior management seeing that need for working together, for looking at ways of creating more efficiency, and then needs to drill down to the whole organization, finding that they actually also see the benefits of creating a more efficient organization, and at the same time that it doesn't affect their work in a negative way. So it has to be done in such a way that people are taken on such a journey to achieve a more efficient organization without compromising quality. And so we've noticed, and we came across a gentleman who will talk in a minute, when a case was presented by one of our customers, Media, and at the IFRA, I think it's more than a year ago, when we had still the opportunity to do events face to face and to meet up, and it was a very interesting and inspiring case. And from WoodWing's perspective, we also want to give you show you that part of the story, because we are convinced, and you know, it requires people, processes, tools to all work seamlessly together. And the two gentlemen that you see on the screen know this all too well, and are helping large, medium-sized publishers, but also marketing departments, and they'll talk a little bit more about that, to achieve tangible benefits and tangible outcomes. And they do so also, I would say, with a human touch. And I think that's something that we also that I at least realized, and I hope that that also will show in their presentation. So with that, I would like to introduce Kai and Peter, who will take you through a very interesting case. Please do note that there is an opportunity to ask questions, as Philip said, and we'll come back at the end because there's going to be an opportunity also to hear more about that case itself later on in the next webinar that we're going to host on December 10th. But for the people and the organizational perspective, I'll hand over to Kai and Peter. Kai and Peter, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Maarten, and good morning, everybody. So let's start. Yeah, let's start. This is my colleague Kai, yes, and this is my partner Peter, and we are two of the founders of Kapero, as Maarten said. So let's start, Peter. Just a few words about Kapero. We're management consultants, and actually we're engineers, which makes us a little different. And we have are specialized in working with creative businesses. So we are working with marketing departments, communication departments, and media houses. And it's mostly about organization and processes, but it's also about channels and effects and different suppliers and procurement. So it's all together. And it's quite interesting today, if we look at our clients today, that they come from different areas. As Maarten said, have been working both with marketing and communication departments, but also media houses. But what we see today is that they get more and more alike. It's not most of the big marketing and communication department strives to become more like a media house. They all want to be like you. So what is happening in the marketing communication departments, they are growing and they're working with their own channels, and content is the new black. We have clients, like for example, a bank, they can be 140 people producing content. So that's quite interesting. So everything is kind of merging. And when it comes to what is happening now is that efficiency is extremely important, because we got lots of channels and lots of activities, and we do more and more stuff. So so we need to be more efficient. And if you look at efficiencies when it comes to content and creative businesses, it's several different areas you need to look at. Actually, there is interesting, because when people talk about efficiency, they just say we want to be efficient, but how do you actually become more efficient? So there are three main areas. Is actually to reduce the volume, do less. I mean, that's a simple one, but quite hard nowadays, because people tend to do more and more. And then it's of course about productivity, to increase the productivity, to get more efficient processes, and this often is connected to roles, because nowadays we see that there are actually too many roles interfering in the processes. So actually it's the connection between processes and roles, and there we have this organizational thing going on. So we need to get more efficient organizations, processes, roles. It's an integrated question actually. And what you can see, we put systems and tool in light green here. And that's because the other ones are much more affecting the efficiency. The system and tools are an enabler. We need them, but it's not them doing the job. It's actually the other things doing the job. But the systems and tools needs to be there to help us be able to do these things. And of course, then it's lower costs in or outsourcing or buying things cheaper, lower sourcing costs. So these are the different areas in our experience that we need to work with, and that are actually creating the real efficiencies. And when we work together with our clients, we have a certain way to approach these kind of change projects, because it's a real change project, and it's like Maarten said, it's a lot about people, you know. So, and the thing is, we do it always in three different steps, and they're quite different from each other, these steps. So we usually start with a, let's say, 2-3 months period of creating a future scenario and getting all the insights you need for the change.
And this is done by doing interviews, and mostly we try to do interviews with the people down in the production, actually doing the everyday work, trying to skip the middle management and the management, more like seeing how does things really work, not how people tell you how they work, but how we do it every day.
So you need to like find the challenges, define the challenges, and also get all relevant data. And when we're talking relevant data, it's organizational data, how many people we are for different roles and so on, but also a lot of data regarding the content that we do. Very important data, which is often lacking in many organizations.
Yes. And the second step then is to define this volume and organization. So you need then to start working on how, if we are a media house or we're going for being a media house, we need to think how much content do we actually need?
How much content do we need, and how do we need to organize ourselves? And after that, now you actually know what kind of efficiencies you can achieve. In the first step, you get an idea of the goal. In the second step, you can really assure how much efficiencies we are able to achieve. In the third step, then it's about more processes, planning, working out all the details, how to do this. And step 2 and step 3, we usually do with workshops together with the people in the organization, and preferably with the editorial people.
Yes.
Because it's them that need to drive the change. It's their content, you know. So this is the way we approach it. We will come back to this quite soon, because now we will talk about this case.
Yeah, and we did, I think it was 1 year ago, we worked with other media in Copenhagen for 1 year and did this totally change.
Yes, and it was a really successful case, and very interesting case, and a great collaboration during the whole case. So we will show you a little how we approached this case and how we did this case together with other media.
But a little bit as Martin described, we will try to do this from the personal perspective, like the people perspective. And I know there will be a webinar a few weeks ahead that will look more into the technical and data
related parts. So Luke from Aller will talk about that. Okay, so just a short thing about Aller Media. It's the leading magazine publisher in the Nordics. They are about 2,300 employees. It's about 600 million euros turnover,
and it exists in Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and Finland.
Yeah, and they got several of the big monthlies in Scandinavia, lots of the big weeklies, and of course they also got some of the big leading portals reaching all the people in mainly women in Scandinavia. So and the challenge, if you look at Aller Media, the challenge, of course, shared with many others in the industry, is that the print volumes are going down.
And at the same time, the digital volumes and digital income not really compensating for the loss we do in print.
So this is the big challenge. And like we looked at before, so our cooperation started with this step 1. So we started with a 3-month period and doing lots of interviews, mainly with editorial staff, but also with marketing and commercial and some other roles. But and this work was really crucial to really find out the real challenges and in the day-to-day workflows.
Yes.
So and what we also did there was to kind of grasp the potential efficiencies that we could do and work out a future scenario and an operating model for the future, so to speak, have an idea on how we could organize ourselves and how we could work.
And as Charlotta Di Babele, who is the CEO, said, we need to find a way to work more efficiently without losing content quality. So this was really crucial. We should do change, we should transform, but we could not lose in quality.
And the funny thing was that she pointed out the solution is not to force the staff to work faster, because they had already tried that several times. So they had gone through several years of just trying to cut down a few percentages every year, and this was not the solution now anymore.
And very important was that we needed to increase the collaboration between different brands. We can't no longer sit and produce our own magazine. We need to start collaboration between the magazines and brands.
And what Charlotte also did in parallel with us doing lots of interviews, that was that she was developing a new vision for Aller Media. And this vision was really important to drive the change. And her vision was about an agenda-setting media house. So it's about the idea to utilize the whole portfolio of brands in driving important and essential public agendas. And with this, to help make real differences for Danish women and Danish families. So this was the overall vision. Of course, being more efficient, but also be much more important in the Danish society, actually.
Yeah, and this agenda thing is not only touching on the brands. It's also something that you can connect the marketing and sales all together around. So it was very important. We started discussing which kind of agendas do we want, and then we can actually work in the three different areas and really work towards this agenda.
Exactly, because this was also a very important thing for the whole media house, was to connect editorial and commercial much more. Because today when we're working, we need editorial and commercial need to meet each other. So we need to connect editorial and commercial perspectives much better. But we can't do it in the small details. We have to do it up here in the big questions, in the strategic questions. And that was very much about the agenda and setting the agendas, base them in the editorial work, but connect them to the commercial work.
All right.
And so then, and now it was time to drive a change.
Yeah. And a very important thing was that we realized that if we want to change, we need to get these people on board. The editorials in chief, the ones that really are the one owning the content, owning the brands,
and actually owning the agendas.
Yeah.
So the thing was that this was, of course, a hard process, because there were lots of editors-in-chief, and Aller Media decided that we will do a new organizational structure. So there were these 6 people that were identified themselves, so to speak, throughout the process. That these were the people driving the change, and also being responsible for different parts of the new editorial organization, and for several brands, several channels. So these were the important people for different areas, as you see here. And with them, we did this change process. So now we started step 2. So we had a vision, we had a future scenario, we had an operating model and some ideas on how to work and how to organize ourselves, but lots of details missing.
And we also had a little bit of a potential. We said, like, in this area we would end up.
Exactly. So now these 6 people, together with us, we were going down to the meat packing district in Copenhagen, and had some rooms booked there, as you see here, and had lots of workshops, and it was very intense during a 2 months period or something like that. 2-3 months period, lots of workshops, working through all these things.
And the interesting thing was that they were not at all used to work with each other, because they all had their brands and took responsibility for that. But now they suddenly were working together, trying to build a new way of working.
So, and the question was where to start. Do we start with finance? Do we start with processes? Do we start with technology?
Organization?
No, let's start with content. Content first. It's the most important thing. That's what we do. So we need to start with the content. So lots of discussions starting with content.
So we were actually going through each and every magazine, seeing how much content we need in the different areas and so on. And connected to this, we were, you see down and on the right side, we see an Excel sheet. And we were doing parallel as we were working constantly in the room. We were collecting this data, connecting it to resources and also the volumes of pages that needed to be done in different content areas.
And it was not only magazines and pages, it was also the digital channels and all the posts they were doing. So all the things that you see here are real stuff from the wall, from the work with them. So we have the whole walls full of their content and their brands and their channels and the different magazines, discussing each and every one and discussing what we could, what we need, what we could share. And suddenly it also turned out a lot that they had lots of needs in common and lots of content that we actually could share between each other. Because the big gold mine that we have is our content. We have lots of it and we create lots of it. So if we know what we do and what we want and have this communication, we could actually share much more.
And as you see, Lars Krolöcker will talk about this the 10th of December, about the Excel file and how we connected this, because that was really crucial to work with the people, but also having all data on board and constantly be able to change that data and see what result we would get out of it.
So what also happened, like Peter said, in these workshops was there were these former editors-in-chief were really working together, discussing content, and we call it the Mads Mikkelsen effect here, because in Denmark it's always Mads Mikkelsen, it's the big name, and everything was also
starting out from an interview we did with one of the journalists, and she said it's very frustrating. I go out and interview, for example, Mads Mikkelsen, and I come back with like 5 different stories because he talks a lot and a lot of interesting things going on. But I only had 2,000 characters to fill, so I throw away at least 3 stories and use 2. So this was like a starting point. Okay, how could we work with that? And then we decided that instead, when we meet Mads Mikkelsen, we start off with his new movie, because that's what's coming up, and he's meeting the press to discuss his new movie.
That's why we're doing the interview.
Yeah.
But we know a lot about him because he's an interesting person for us.
So he also has a new house and he has children and he's very good at cooking or interested in cooking, and he recently divorced and he got a new wife. And so on. So there is a lot of stories. If we can have a broader perspective and not thinking one article in one brand, thinking more of what kind of content could we actually get out of Mads Mikkelsen, and not thinking just for now or thinking for 1 year ahead, what could be interesting.
Because Mads Mikkelsen is always interesting for the customers to read about.
Yeah. And interesting, we just talked with Charlotte in Alle the other week, and she told Nana even changed a little bit more. So when they go out and do an interview with Mads Mikkelsen or alike, they always now start with a film. So they start shooting a film, and then they write different articles from that interview.
So this was the big enlightenment. And connected to this, we worked out a new way of planning. A new mindset connected to the planning, and that is much more that we plan stories, and then we will publish these stories in different brands and in different channels and in different time frames. But one story we will publish lots of times, but in different ways.
And it's very interesting this with the time perspective, that it actually sometimes with some stories almost plan 2 years ahead, put the article. This article will end up in this brand like in 2 years ahead.
So today, some things are, like Peter said, planned even 2 years ahead, and some things are planned in the last minute. But many things are planned much more ahead. So, and when it comes to the organizational approach, we had also lots of discussions about this, because the classic way of the organizational approach is to have a brand-centric approach. We have different brands and we organize ourselves around brands. But now talking about this, it was much more of how can we have a content-centric approach to organize ourselves around content. So that was very important and a very important goal. But still, brands are important, very important. So we still need to match different brands. And when we're talking brands, we're also talking digital brands. And we are big believers actually in the importance of brands, even more so when we get digital. So brands, in a digital environment, brands are even more important. So this is not about taking away brands, not at all.
No, it's actually the other way around, to really work with the brands and try to take them apart further from each other, so to speak, because what
find their unique identity.
Yeah, because what we realized when you had the brand approach on the organization, often the brands tended to do the same stories and actually was competing with each other. Now we can pull them apart a little bit and make them much more unique. But very important with this content-centric approach is that the planning, as you see, also is done cross-brand. So we're actually opening up and see what the other brands are doing at the same time. That's a crucial thing.
So, and after that, now we had an organization, we had potential,
we knew the volume,
we knew the volumes, we had defined the content, how to work with it tomorrow. So there were new content need defines for the different brands, for the different channels. Now it was time to look at roles, responsibilities, and processes and detail everything. And these are also things from the wall, from the workshops. You see the Cecilia there, she has a black skirt. That's the elder woman, you know. She's a little more stylish. And at the left, you have the curly hair. So we really worked through this together and defined which roles we do need.
But also here, working with the organization, we work together, cross-brands. So there was not only one head of the brand saying, this is how I want to organize. They were really taking out and taking in people from the different organizations, looking how do we optimize the whole organization.
So, and the results of this work was really spectacular, because what we really achieved here was we achieved to have fewer roles with much clearer mandates in the process. This was a very important thing.
And also, due to that, we got a much more flat organization with less hierarchies and new editorial leadership roles, very important.
And due to this, we got much shorter and much faster processes.
Yeah. We had less content, but as we had less content, we could actually spend more time on the content and really go for better quality in the content we do.
And also regarding the planning that we talked about, we achieved much tighter collaboration in the planning, and now we're planning across brands, across segments, across channels.
And as we said, integration of print and digital. You need now to start working together, because if we're having like the digital team doing their stuff and the print stuff, people doing their stuff, we once again doing the same stuff at the same time.
And what we also managed to achieve was that we got better quality from the desks and hubs. They were using desks or hubs. People in the industry have different names for these solutions, but focusing on, for example, food or health or these kind of areas. So and before they were struggling with the quality, but now we got much greater quality out of these hubs.
And the interesting thing, it showed that efficiency and quality are two sides of the same coin, because the things that drive efficiency are the things that drives quality as well. It's less people involved, it's clearer mandates, shorter processes, both drive good quality and efficiency at the same time,
if you do it the right way. Okay, so and we have some important interesting reflections from the key people at Aller, and the first one is from Charlotte, and she said a very interesting thing. She said, we have reduced the total content costs because we produce less content. But at the same time, we can increase the quality on specific articles. And we thought that that is a really interesting thing, because since we're doing less content, we could actually put more money and resources into a specific article.
Very important to point out, they don't publish less. It's like, so less content, but still publishing as much.
Exactly. And also the brand question here, that they still, and even more so, I would say, we tailor the content for different brands and channels. And this is also very related to the planning, because if we know it from the forehand, in the planning have identified what we're going to do, it's no problem to tailor the content for different brands. If we do it afterwards, if we are trying to reuse and republish stuff that has already been published, then it's much harder
and take much more time.
Exactly.
Now we plan the production of content together without losing focus on each brand. It's actually enhanced the identity of the brands and make it possible to work across brand with great foresight. And in addition, we have created an organization where we have broken down all barriers. And for the first time, we are really working as one media house.
And here we have some reflections of Eben Rowe. She was one of the key persons here. They got new editorial leadership roles, and they decided to call them media chiefs. So Eben Rowe was the media chief for the specialized hubs for food, health, garden, and this was her her drawings and her reflections about her new role at the left, and also at the right, the process of going through this change with lots of bumps in the road, but with a great result in the end. And at the left, you see her role, and it was her struggling with a new role, because the media chiefs got a much broader role, as many of the people actually in other media got broader roles. So it's not only the magazines that she's having her knee on, it's also the portals, the different events, and lots of other stuff, and the social media channels and so on. And on her left foot there, the 150 million that she's responsible for bringing in, so to speak.
But I think it's really interesting, and that was a comment from all of them, that working with these kind of questions, often when you talk with the editorial in chief, talking about like efficiency, trying to calculate how the productivity and so on, they think that is quite boring and not that really interesting. But after this process, I think all 6 of them were really like, wow, this opened up my mind and really made me see different things in my job.
Yeah, so here we have the others, 2 of the others. It was like Cecilia, and she was also pointing out that their editors are taking much greater responsibility today than before. And they are taking much more responsibility across channels, but also about quality, which is so important thing.
And here on the right side, this is a mind-blowing process. We have been releasing energy and setting people free, and that's a magic thing to do. Proud to have been a part of it. And finally, then Charlotte,
the final comment from Charlotte: we have saved a lot of money, which is fantastic. I mean, they needed to do that. But the best thing is that we publish better content. What a great result.
Yeah.
And so to finish these things off, we have some lessons learned and some reflections from our side.
Yeah.
What made this project so successful and so important?
Very important was that there was a clear goal. It was actually in money described. This is what we need to achieve.
And then we had a very fast and condensed change process with a quite tight deadline. So we really got together and really needed to work through this change very intensely.
And could be very focused on the questions.
Yeah. Then we have some things that we talked about a lot. And first thing, very important, that the editorial leaders are owning the change process. that they got the mandate and the trust from the top management to own this change process, to work out how we're going to achieve these goals, to still be able to achieve great quality and a good process.
Yeah, and then also, as we have described, fewer editorial leaders, but also with increased commercial responsibilities, connecting the content to the commercial aspect of the content. Very important, I would say.
And interesting that we also was very important to get the editorial leaders together, because they were not used to working together. And this was a very interesting experiment, that they started to work together and really saw the use of working together, so to speak.
And then we have the integration of print and digital, which of course is crucial, because otherwise you tend to have a young team sitting doing a lot of content and very focused on producing volume, and then you have the old team doing the print version, and you need to get the energies from both of it. You need to get the knowledge about good content and quality content, and you need to get the pace from the digital people and connect that together, and so they actually can learn from each other.
And also the insights from the digital side. So I think it was really interesting to see that these two worlds, so to speak, were also, it was very beneficial for both parties, this integration. Of course, not easy, but very beneficial.
And of course, the relevant data was crucial. Get rid of the assumptions and myths. Really knowing exactly how much volumes are we producing in each and every area. Knowing how much people we have, how much people are focusing on what, doing what. It was, and Lars Kruleke will show you, so you should really tune in the 10th of December, because it will be interesting to show. He will show how detailed we work with that.
And also very important in this process, of course, was that HR and finance were very active and supported the whole process, so that all the figures got in place and all the HR perspectives were met, and there were all these different parts that needed to be very tightly connected to this whole process.
Yeah, because it's also interesting that they were not, the finance was not in the driving seat. It was the editorial leaders who was in the driving seat, but finance and the HR were standing just behind, picking up the balls that was falling down, and just like helping them and supporting them to deliver what they was aiming for.
And finally, the important thing that we talked about before, that efficiency and quality actually can go hand in hand, but you have to do it the right way. So it's not just pointing it out, that's like it is. If you do it the right way, then it can go hand in hand.
Also, very important that content, if we do content reuse inside our media hub, it must be for free, because that opens up a totally different way of working. Actually seeing that is an article already written, or there will be an article written about this subject that I actually use for free. That will open up, and you will start doing different things, and you will focus on something else and doing that with much more quality.
So this was a quite interesting side effect actually from this thing here, because all the accounting rules are now done differently. So they have to rework the accounting, because the traditional way with the accounting is also to put out everything on brands, you know, and if you have much more of a content-centric approach, now the whole accounting doesn't work anymore. So you need to have a new approach on the accounting also.
Yeah, and important to work with both feeling and thinking perspective. You need to connect them, because they are as important, both of them.
Okay, so thank you. Great that you could tune in, and we have some time for questions, I believe. So yeah, let's
all right. Good. So I'll wait. Thanks, Kai and Peter. Very interesting. As I'll wait for Philip to see if there's any questions that came in via the chat. The question I'd have for you, gentlemen, is: so where did sort of the tools and the software came in? I get the impression that was coming at the end for us to see what was is that the right assumption? Can you say something about that?
Yeah, if we think the first step was the inside and the operating model, and then second was the volumes and organization. after that, from that organization point of view and the volumes, you started to having ideas of what kind of supporting tools you needed. But definitely when you get into the process, it's most definitely you need to have. But also when we went through volumes and organization, we could see in the discussion that there were some solutions that were not in place. Talking about, like, for example, how can we use digital material to print and vice versa. So of course that was like something that was crucial. Like, this needs to be worked in a total different way, so we actually can do that without like putting too much effort into it.
And I would also like to comment on that. What also happened throughout the process was that, I mean, in the beginning there was quite a lot of talk about tools and systems, and then there were more focus on organization and these things that we were talking about now. And then there was again more focus on tools, but now in another way. So I would say that they had a little different view on what they needed after this process, which was quite good, because sometimes the discussions in the beginning regarding tools were very detailed on certain small solutions and details, and now it was much more, it was a little broader and focusing on the really important things, I would say, when it comes to tools.
Yeah. And can you say something about the timeline? How long did this take? Because it looks like a quite extensive project.
Yeah, I would say it took a year. We had quite a high pace in the project, as we said, and we think that was quite good. So I would say it took a year, something like that.
Okay, Philip, so you have 2 questions that came in. Can you share those with Peter and Kai, please?
Yeah, so I have 2 questions from the audience. One is from Johansson. So he asked whether Alla Media changed the tools, or do they just change the usage of the existing tools?
Actually, they kept their tool, but they were the main tool, but they were needing some support to integrate things, I would say.
Yeah, I would say both. Yeah. It's, I mean, they were changing in some ways the way they work with the existing tools, but there is.
But they were not changing supply for tools. They kept
Yeah. So, and if I can comment, because prior to the project that you embarked on, there was already, they were using our digital asset management system, if I'm not mistaken. But for example, they start using this, what I understood also from Lars, much more intensively to reach his reuse objectives, right? So they were probably getting more out of their digital asset management system, for example, as they were before. And I think the other area, what I think guided, and Peter, what you mentioned about the print and digital, that also required a real change in working with more content first approach, and then later on deciding which channel. So that was also something that before they were already, because Aller is quite a long time customer of ours, they were not using that functionality. But actually, Philip, that's sort of also more on this in the webinar on December 10th, where you can see more details on that. Yeah. Okay, there was another question, Philip.
Yeah, this probably ties in with the related question. So there was also a question about, do you have any statistics on the amount of content reused? So I think this is something that also.
Yeah, and I think Lars will show a little bit of that on the 10th, but we went statistic on all reuse, and we set goals for every category, in different category, for like food, for gardening, for interior design. We had like goals, how much reuse it should be in different areas. And the funny thing was that the goals, since the goals were integrated into the planning, we were sure that the goals would be met, so to speak. Because the traditional way working with this reuse thing is that you have a content asset management system, and then you're searching for stuff, and then you try to reuse things. And this was the big mindset change now, that we're planning content,
and already in the planning stage, we plan the reuse ahead, so to speak. And this changes also a little your mindset on how to work with the tools. You still need all these tools to make it possible to store all the assets and find them easily and so on. But you have planned beforehand what you want to reuse in which situation.
I can very much relate to this, and I think having the tools in place and even people understanding what they can bring in terms of value, but then if the process is not as such, or people are not used to work that way, then you end up with, I thought was an interesting case of another customer of ours, more than 300 Thanksgiving turkey recipes within all different brands, and every year. Again, you know, if you don't know where the turkey recipe is, you get, oh no, let's ask one of the writers to write another one up again. So I think it's a lot has to do that you have a tool that's nice, but you need to have the processes, and people need to know how to use it as well easily. Yeah.
And these kind of tools, like increasing the reuse, planned reuse, and doing less than working together across digital and print, they are so strong and make such a good impact on your efficiency if you can get them work together. So actually, when we work with these media chiefs and the editors in chief, when they were like, okay, I think it would look like this, and the result, the efficiency result was too great. We were really like, okay, we need to back a little bit, because they thought like, this is doable. We can do it still with good quality. And we were like, okay, let's not aim for that at the moment. Let's back up. But what they say when we talk with them, like last week, they say they actually still increase the efficiency, because this way of organizing make it possible to continuously make yourself more efficient.
Great. Philip, there was one more question, right?
There's one more question, yeah. And I think that's then, or let's say we have multiple questions, but I think you do one more, and then we can answer the other questions individually, because they're somehow also tied into each other. I got a question, and it's the following: many organizations still don't understand how content-centric would work together with brand-centric. What kind of data and arguments do you see to defend this approach to them?
Yeah. But I think you need to start off with, as we said, with an operating model. Show a little bit like an idea how that could work before going into the data, before going into exactly who's doing what, having like an overall idea that everybody can feel like, yeah, this could work. I think it's important.
Yes, but I would say there is no really easy or standard solution to this. I think you need to work out, I mean, I guess you could say, I would say most companies need to be much more content-centric, but not at the expense of being brand-centric. And how this is in practice should work, it's hard. You have to work it through. You have to work out your own definition of it and how to solve it. There is no easy answer. And you have to do. That is why we are always talking about the editorial management people being involved, because they need to do these definitions. They need, because they understand about content and they understand about brands, and you need to work structured through this and make your own definitions.
Yeah, because we have seen companies having an ambition to just do this without like talking to the editors in chief. Is more like saying this is how it should look, and then you're like, then you're in a war. So you really need to bring them on, and that's what we try to show with this presentation. You do it through them, because they are the core, and you need to get them to get on board.
And the typical example of this would be, we've seen lots of companies, they have established these desks or hubs for different content areas, but many of them have not really succeeded. So the result of this has been less quality and inefficiencies. So it got less efficient and it got less quality. out of these organizational changes. So this is a good example on how you can actually fail with this ambition. So you need to do it in the right way.
Yeah. Yep. Thank you.
All right. And I think that that's also how Aller did it, right? And they implemented with still having people writing for various titles, but still having brand managers. And I think, I'm not sure, but that some of that we will cover, Philip, if we go to the next slide. So thank you very much, Kai and Peter. It was very interesting. So we talked about today about people, about the organization, about the importance of having senior management giving the direction, but then having actually owners, key stakeholders taking that project and driving it for further implementation, and making sure that everyone goes and joins on that journey. And I think what I found very interesting is that this is one of these, I think a lot of us have been involved in projects that were potentially not as successful because they were, for example, only top down, and then some people from IT or whatever had to implement things, and a lot of people didn't like it. They were not taken on part of this journey. And this is one of the exciting things I think about this project, that I really see that all the users, all the people affected were taken on the journey from the start, and that sort of meant that actual changes potentially in tools of ways of working were possibly easier to implement at the end. But nonetheless, that was not, of course, a piece of cake, and that sort of drives me leads me to inviting each one here on the call today to listen to our next webinar that ties in very nicely to what Peter and Kai shared today. All right, so there is a strategy, there is a transformation project, but then obviously that also needs to be implemented, and where to start and where to potentially do things differently or stop doing things, and what should we be continuing to do, and really also showing a lot more of this detailed data that came out of those whiteboards and all those charts that Peter and Kai showed. That's what Lars Krolleke, Director of Digital Transformation at Aller Media, will share with us on December 10th. And I do hope you will join us then, because it's a very nice addition to what was shared today. So I think with that, we'll wrap it up. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Peter from Stockholm. Wishing you a good week and weekend. Thanks, everyone, for listening in, and hope to welcome you again on December 10th. Take care. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Thank you.